Afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's June 26, 2026 program, the EmeraldAshBorer Cometh, Tree Health in a Changing Climate. My name is Betsy Pownell, board member of the City Club of Eugene and coordinator of today's program. It's my honor to welcome you to another of the many forums we've held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club creates access to our local leaders and provides a platform for Eugene area community members to be heard. In light of the division we are experiencing in the world, I believe it's important now more than ever for us to gather as a community with curious minds and mutual respect. This space to listen, ask, learn, and gather is what City Club aims to provide to our community each week. Anyone who attends a City Club forum has equal access for asking questions in our space. We would love for you to browse our past programs at cityclubofueugene.org or our YouTube or Facebook page. Please consider becoming a member if you'd like to support our rigorous volunteer work as Oregon's only city club that provides weekly forums. There are many ways to partner with us, and I'd like to thank our sponsors. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit at lanecc.edu. And thank you to Lane County for their generous support, and to our web host, 9 Planets, whose website support is critical to our functioning, making it easy to sign up as a member or to learn more about us. A quick reminder, please silence all cell phones. And with that, I will introduce today's program. The title of this program, The EmeraldAshBorer Cometh, was borrowed from the 1939 play by Eugene O'Neill, The Iceman Cometh. The Iceman in the play is a metaphor for death, the only truth that cannot be ignored or altered by delusion. The EmeraldAshBorer is our Iceman, an insect whose destruction of our Oregon ash trees is inevitable, yet currently hard to imagine as we enjoy the grace of these trees throughout our region. I first heard about the EmeraldAshBorer in 2021 when I consulted a local arborist about our trees. He talked of its lethality to ash trees, that it was on the way as it migrated from the Midwest, and that everyone is gearing up for its arrival. He thought Oregon had time before the borer arrived in the Willamette Valley. However, in 2022, the first EmeraldAshBorer was discovered in Forest Grove. And just this month, the EmeraldAshBorer has been confirmed in at least 3 new Willamette Valley communities: in a shopping center parking lot just east of I-5 in Tualatin, in a parking lot right outside Newburgh, and at a private residence in Silverton. The EmeraldAshBorer is here. How can we as a community best prepare for the destruction this insect brings? What does the future hold for our trees and diverse ecosystem in the Willamette Valley? We have 3 arborists here today to discuss the present-day reality, probable future of our ash trees, and proactive measures we can take to remediate the loss we are facing. I'd like to add that these guys are friends. Please keep in mind as you listen to them that while they might not agree on EmeraldAshBorer remediation principle, they like, enjoy, and respect each other, something not often seen in our polarized country. I am so grateful they are here today. And also you see brochures and stickers and a contact list on the table. If there aren't any for you and that we've run out, please let me know and I can get them for you. So with that, please welcome Albie Toomson of Sperry Tree Care, Jeff Chandler of Chandler's Tree Service, and Eric Burke, Director of Friends of Trees in Eugene Springfield. And first up will be Albie.
Can you hear me? Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Albie Toomson, and I've been an arborist for close to 30 years now. EmeraldAshBorer came to the US in the early 2000s from very likely imported wood from Asia. Eventually okay, up to the podium. All right. pest arrived in early 2000s in the US and from imported wood from Asia, and the insect eventually just emerged from a larval state into adults and start to disseminate in the Midwest. I think Michigan was ground zero, and soon started to kill thousands of ash trees. There are no varieties of ashes that are resistant to the pest, and they really have just created havoc very, very quickly. In a matter of a few years, you had the pest moving from one state to the other. Michigan, Illinois, pretty much the whole Midwest was hit. So what happens in usually May, the adults are coming out from the tree. They just came out from the last stage of the larva. They pupate and eventually become adult, come out of the tree and start feeding on the leaves of the ash trees. And eventually, within a few weeks, they reproduce. The female are laying eggs, about between 100 and 200 eggs, into the crevices of the trees. From the eggs, of course, the larvae hatch, quickly tunnels into the cambium and the phloem of the tree and disrupt they're green, as the name suggests. And sometimes you have woodpeckers sloughing the bark, so signs that are visible sometime for the distance. And eventually you will have the confirmation by a D-shaped hole that is about 1/8 of an inch in width. That is very hard to detect. You really have to get close to the tree. So the larvae could be in the tree between 1 to 2 years, actually, depending on the climate and the species. And they go from stage to stage, eventually becoming the final stage of, like I said, of the larva. They pupate and overwinter, and the following spring they emerge, and you have the cycle. Keeps on going. What we know from discussions with other arborists from the Midwest and on the East Coast is it is pretty devastating, of course, for the ash population, but it's also on a tree care perspective and logistics, pretty dangerous to remove trees that are getting killed by emerald ash borer. The trees become brittle, and there have been examples of accidents from people trying to remove trees. Like I said earlier, I think there are no species of ashes that are resistant to the pest. They also attack the olive trees and the French trees. And so it's pretty grim when you think about what it can do to our trees in the valley. Because as you know, we have multiple varieties of ashes. We have Oregon ash, of course, which is a crucial part of the ecosystem in Oregon, especially in the greenways and the drainages, the wetlands. But we also have ornamental ashes: green ash, white ash, Mediterranean ash, which are the 3 most common trees that you see in urban areas. I have 3 ashes at home, and I like my trees. They produce the shade I like. So this is pretty much what I would have to say about the logistics and the description of the emerald ash borer infestations. What is a little challenging for us is even before the emerald ash borer was first in Oregon, even in the States, sometimes you see Oregon ashes in the wild that look already like they have been attacked, because they do have dieback in the crown, but it's not necessarily associated with the pest. So that's going to be the challenge for us, is just to be able just to see if it really is emerald ash borer or not. We're going to have to get some calls from people saying, I have emerald ash borer, can you come and look? And if we very careful and thorough with our investigation, we might not find the pest quite yet. Like Betsy said, it's in 3 different locations in the Willamette Valley, still further north. Cross my fingers. Apparently Silverton probably was the ground zero, but it was not reported as such. After Forest Grove was discovered, I think about a year later, somebody called the Forest Service, and they went to Silverton, and the biologists there found evidence on the trees that could have been older than what they found in Forest Grove. So it's possible that the pest was already in Oregon pre-2022. We don't know for sure if it's not in Eugene yet. There hasn't been any case reported. I keep an eye on it. Sometimes I feel like I should stop somewhere and start looking, but I could spend hours and hours trying to find something. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about this. It's like to stay positive in the fact that I assume that some trees might actually be naturally resistant. It happens in nature with every single case. It doesn't mean that everything is eradicated just because. You do have natural resistance happening somewhere, but it definitely will be a minority. But the Forest Service also gathered hundreds of thousands of seeds of trees in prevision of the arrival of the pest. So I'm going to give my time to Jeff, who's the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, my name is Jeff Chandler. I'm a board certified master arborist and I own a small company here in Eugene. We do pruning and removals, but one of my bigger focuses is tree injection, to treat our ash trees to help keep them alive for as long as we possibly can. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. The first thing I want to introduce is why it's important for us to treat our ash trees. Right? And the biggest reason is ash trees provide so many important ecosystem services to our wild areas and to our landscapes at home. It is true, and I think there's a lot of evidence to support this that can be found, but our mature ash trees provide way more ecosystem services than our younger ash trees. So if we're losing all of our big ash trees, that's a big problem for us to overcome in the face of climate change as well. Another good reason is it's going to protect your property and landscape values. You know, trees provide value to our homes and to the land that we own, either sentimental value or economical value and societal benefits. Thirdly, it's very costly to remove trees, or can be very costly to have a crew like Sperry Tree Care or my company come in and remove an ash tree, especially after it's been dead for a long time. And lastly, the idea of treatment is a good way to mitigate the creation of hazardous trees. With the speed at which this beetle kills our ash trees is pretty significant. Everyone's probably familiar with watching the birch trees in our area decline from the bronze birch borer. Well, this is a very similar beetle that has a much more rapid attack pattern and produces much more rapidly. So if we can mitigate that ahead of time with some treatment, then we can defer some of those costs down the road and help maintain some of our ecosystem services while we create new management plans. The other thing I want to include in this is I don't think treatment is the only option, and I don't think every single tree is worth treating. I do think that we need to be choosy about that with guidance from our professionals in the area. So this is just one management option in our toolbox. So I'm going to move on, as I'm going to try not to read this paper, but why chemical treatment of ash trees works. The application process, specifically the one that I use in another system, are systemic applications. So we're getting the chemical directly inside the tree, and from there, as the beetles feed on the tree, they're ingesting it. And that reduces our risk of drift potential to off-target species pretty significantly. Sorry, I was on the wrong page. Because the treatment goes into the tree, the xylem and the phloem that Albie was talking about, the cambial tissues, transport it throughout the tree. So we start at the base, it gets injected into the tree, goes up through the trunk wood, and there's residual there, goes into the branches, there's residual there, and in the first year, there's chemical in the foliage. And the way the beetle likes to attack is it starts at the top of the tree because it likes sunlight, and it feeds on the foliage, and from there we can capture some of the adult beetles. As the larvae are chewing up the wood just behind the bark, they're ingesting the chemical as well, so we're capturing the larval stage. And so it's a pretty important way to manage these beetles. With success rates, you know, as Albie said, the beetle has been here for quite a long time. It was found in 2002 in Michigan originally, and we have 24 years of historical data to show the benefits of these. If we're treating healthy trees before they're infested, we have a 95 to 99% success rate at keeping some survivability. Again, that depends on the tree being healthy, excludes other conditions that can harm the tree, such as significant drought periods, mechanical damage, those sorts of things. Declining trees are much harder to treat. So for me, what I do is if the tree is more than 30% dead, I'm not going to treat it for you because it's not going to be that effective. And so it's worth thinking up a new way to recreate a tree in that space, for example, and develop a plan around that. The way systemic insecticides work, it's sort of, you know, the way they get up through the tree. The system I use is a little pressurized container. We push it into the tree at the base of the tree, and then transpiration is what pulls the chemical up through into the crown of the tree. And transpiration is very dependent on foliage. If we don't have enough foliage, we can't get that chemical translocated throughout the tree, which is why healthy trees are easier and more important to be focused on. Next, there's several different treatment options. You know, for the past decade or a little bit longer, the studies have shown that emamectin benzoate, this is the product that I use, is the gold standard for treatment currently. It has a 2 to 3 year residual rate within trees, so you only have to treat it once every couple of years. We inject 5 milliliters per inch of diameter up to 10 milliliters per inch of diameter. So trees actually don't get a very significant amount of chemical that gets pushed up and pulled up through them. Another common chemical is imidacloprid, which is a neonicotinoid. I stay away from that. And that can be injected into the tree, or it can be applied as a soil drench. But that's an annual treatment option. So, and I should say, with the emamectin benzoate, you inject it in the spring or summer or up to the fall even. That first year, the chemical shows up in the foliage and in the flower tissue. And I know this is very important. Pollinators are very important for us. And you'll see some companies injecting as early as April, as soon as the tree is mostly leafed out. I think it's more responsible to wait until the second half of May when trees have finished putting on their flowers and their pollen, because by the second year, the residual effect of the chemical is much more decreased in those sources. So we're taking away some of the impact of pollinators that way, and keeping it, not affecting off-target species so much. Trunk injections work. Their advantages, excuse me. They have the highest efficacy rate for work. Like I said, a healthy tree has a 95% chance of survival. That's pretty darn good. Minimal environmental exposure, because what we're doing is we're drilling a little hole into the tree around the base of the tree and injecting directly into the tree. So there's no drift issues. The biggest issue would be somebody accidentally spilling their product. pretty low disadvantages. And the hole that we drill in, even though it's injurious to the tree, is so small that by the time we're back there in 2 years, the tree is compartmentalized around that wound, as long as whoever the applicator is has done their job well. Some advantages to the imidacloprid. I hate to say it, it's not my favorite. It is an easier application, especially with soil drenches, which makes it much more affordable for people. But again, you have to do that every year, and you have a higher risk of affecting off-target species with that product. And then there are several other products. I was talking to somebody on the way over here, and they were telling me about an organic product that people are treating trees with. And I'm going to figure out what that name is, and I'll share it later. So there are some other options. For timing is incredibly crucial for this, and not just timing for when we're applying the product to the tree directly. An example of that would be we want to wait until the tree is fully leafed out. I try to wait for a delay or for post-pollen production so that we're minimizing some effect. We can't treat when it's really hot, so if it's 90 degrees out, we're not going to treat because that'll burn the tree. And I don't like to treat past September because by then the trees are going dormant and we have less efficacy at that point. Other than that, the most important thing for timing is being proactive. So as Albie was saying, and Betsy said, beetles were found in Silverton. The population that was found in Silverton a couple of years ago is suspected to have been there for about a decade. So it is very likely that it's here and we haven't found it. But if we can be proactive with the trees that we want to treat, we have a much better shot at keeping them around for our environment. And again, as I said this earlier, this is just one tool in the box. The other really important things to be paying attention to are talking with your professionals and having your trees monitored and learning what to look for so that we can manage them, as well as having conversations with professionals such as Albie about what steps to take and what's going to work for you and your property and your space. And with those things, we could integrate how we manage our environment, and we really have a much better shot at managing our
It's an honor to be here with Albie and Jeff, who I really admire as arborists and consider my teachers. And thanks to the City Club for having us here. The news tells us that EAB is a catastrophe, and it is, but no one is telling us the fact that EAB is here because our lives demand it. Container ships cross the oceans from other continents laden with pallets of consumer goods for us to buy online or in big box stores. These pallets bring us species like EAB. If we want to break the cycle of EAB, MOB, the golden beetle, and all the rest, we'll need to build local and regional economies. The story we're often told about EAB leaves out that Oregon ash is a beautiful species with a right to exist that has lived here more than 1 million years through radical climate changes, learning and adapting with much to teach us about life and generosity. As a kid, 50 years ago, I walked a couple of miles to school every day at Roosevelt. Every morning, I'd cut through the ash grove and jump across Amazon Creek on my way back to school. Back then, when we called Amazon Creek the slough. The big hazing threat at Roosevelt was getting slewed. After school, the bullies would chase you and dunk you in the slough. I ran away, jumping Amazon Creek and running into the ash grove that was my refuge. Since then, I've had many adventures in and around it. I'm attached to it. I'll miss it if it's gone. Oregon ash thrives in poorly drained soils better than most native or introduced trees. This is a great characteristic for trees in our cities that try and grow in soil we've severely compacted, or in cities like Eugene that built upon wetlands. Those of us who have some connections to Oregon ash typically make the connection through walking or jogging or birding in and around ash groves in our city. Few of us know that these ash groves we are lightly attached to are to a significant extent the result of genocide and forced removal of Kalapuyan peoples and fire suppression. Under Kalapuyan management, highly skilled land use limited ash and other trees and favored prairie and savanna. The Kalapuya actively managed most of the Willamette Valley for over 500 generations, our only historic regional example of highly skilled sustainable land use. The Kalapuya managed a 2 million acre complex of wet and dry prairies and oak savannas from Cottage Grove to Oregon City with unsurpassed skill, using practices like selection, weeding, and use of fire to garden crops like camas, tarweed, oaks, and many other species. Without Kalapuya management, most of this 2 million acres would have been Doug fir forest with Oregon ash dominating the wetlands. You can see thousands, tens of thousands of ash today invading prairie relics west of Eugene on Highway 26. Ash is traditionally used by Native peoples to make canoe paddles, camas digging sticks, axe and club handles and shafts, buckets, water bailers, bowls, pipes for firewood. The roots are a useful weaving material. Ash was used medicinally to reduce fever, heal wounds, and repel snakes. Oregon ash wood is prized for its shock resistance, flexibility, and strength. It is excellent wood for flooring, cabinetry, and easy splitting firewood with high heat output. But almost none of us really cares about Oregon ash. The strongest connections I see are Native people and woodworkers who work with ash, and wildlife biologists who recognize the value of the insect life in the trees. Arborists and landscape architects generally don't like the species. There are many harms that will come from EAB, but let's end the doom. Many ash will need to be killed and removed, but without human intervention, many ash trees, especially in less developed areas, will come back from their roots and live on as multi-stemmed shrubs, as we've seen in the forests of eastern North America. Oregon ash is not going away, and it's not going extinct. Oregon has done more than most states to prepare and respond to EAB. I give thanks to all the folks working for the future of Oregon ash. Last year, people collected ash seeds from southern British Columbia to southern California that represent knowledge in the DNA of Fraxinus latifolia. We're learning 3 species of introduced wasps have been released that feed on EAB larvae. We're learning about possible fungal parasites that may attack EAB. We will find resistant trees. My guess is that within 10 or 20 years, we will have resistant strains of Oregon ash, and we will be replanting them back into the landscape. Maybe we'll even select ones for anthracnose resistance, form, and fall color. We won't lose Oregon ash. The real questions for me that I don't have answers to are, how do we build a reciprocal relationship with ash again? And how will we ethically restore it to landscapes we've radically altered? One key thing missing in the discussion of EAB is its habitat values and the costs of injection. Ash trees are full of aphids during the warm season and many other beneficial insects. Aphids are the key wildlife in Oregon ash. I wish to speak a word for aphids that feed so many creatures, their bodies, and the importance of aphids to food webs. Among other ways aphids are generous, they feed their bodies to lady beetles, syrphid fly larvae, parasitic wasps, spiders, insect-eating birds. Their honeydew feeds ants and the sooty molds that feed many creatures. Many of us will face the hard choice of whether to inject or remove ash trees we care about. I want people to make an informed choice, considering the important benefits from injection that Jeff talked about, and like shading and cooling from large trees versus killing the critical life in the trees. This includes aphids, lace bugs, plant bugs, web worms, butterfly and moth larvae, and others that feed on ash leaves and sap. 50 species of butterflies and moths use Oregon ash as a larval host plant, including the two-tailed swallowtail and a moth called Sympistris fortis that relies exclusively on ash. These die from injection. There are no simple solutions. The only real solution is the radical transformation of our culture and economy that we don't want yet. Many of my friends believe EAB is already here, but it has only been documented 60 miles away. Best practices in our field is not to inject pesticides into ash trees until EAB has been found by science within 20 miles of the injection site. Yet there is widespread injection going on for EAB in Eugene now by many companies, and there has been for years. Some companies, not Jeff's, use fear to sell injection contracts. There are many things we can do, and only time to list a few. The path to rebuilding a reciprocal relationship with Oregon ash is learning to use local ash for fiber, medicine, weaving with ash roots, carving its wood, walking through ash groves and paying attention to them, giving thanks and gratitude to trees, helping find EAB when it comes here, and looking for resistance. Some great examples of ash groves to explore locally are at the south end of 32nd Street in Springfield, the Amazon Running Trail Ash Grove in Stewart Park and Bethel Community Park in West Eugene. Just west of town are the Coyote Creek Trails, or go to the country fair and admire the giant ash trees and the beautiful ash forest there. We should have been replanting for years, but the time is still now. What should we be replanting? I don't have time right now to list the trees, but I'm happy to share my list or OSU resources. Don't plant replacement trees that need full sun in deep shade. Be active. Don't be afraid to thin and prune to make light for replanting. Start replanting trees now. Get trained as an Oregon Forest Pest Protector by OSU. Get involved in help removing invasive plants when EAB hits full bore. Scout for resistance. As Albee mentioned, he's identified resistance to bronze birch borer in birches here in Eugene. Help us find resistance when EAB is here. Support your local arborists, the city urban forestry program, urban forestry nonprofits, and other community organizations. Help the folks building local economies reliant on plants and animals in our local ecosystems. Advocate for giving land and power to tribes. Oregon ash has been here for more than 1 million years and will continue to exist here for many more. I encourage you to join me in getting to know Oregon ash better. Because this is a vast subject we're just touching on here, Friends of Trees will be leading several upcoming tree walks in Oregon ash groves in our community where we can continue this conversation. Dates and times will be on the Friends of Trees calendar page on our website. Thank you all.
Before we begin our Q&A, a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC, for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. In the metro area of Lane County, they broadcast on 89.7 FM, and in Florence on 88.1 FM. For those listening at home or in transit right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We are grateful and honored to have you. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived at klcc.org, as well as on our YouTube channel and the City Club of Eugene podcast. Feel free to line up at the microphone, and we'll have a short break before the Q&A. We ask that you ask one question. If you have a statement, you want to say something, these guys will hang out after the program, and you can share your information then. But if you just ask one question, that would be great. Thank you. got a few. And let's see, is everybody, okay, all right. First questioner?
All right, mic test, sounds good. Hello, my name is Gritz. I'm a local arborist. I've been a certified arborist here for about 12 years now, and these are my pals also. And I was asked to do the first question, so one question that I've been kind of mulling over as I'm going around in the community is, what are we going to do with all this material? And are the chips that we're going to be grinding up of these ash trees, do we know how they're going to affect other ash trees? My other question is, a lot of us out here are homeowners, and what do we do as a public, and how can we get involved with trying to find this insect?
Good question. Good question. Okay, who wants to take that first?
Yeah, I guess, Grits, I'll start. Back to your first question about dealing with the material, the state, I'm sure, has a policy or a protocol on what you can do. There's quarantines for the counties that EAB has been found in already. But one of the standard practices is making sure that our chippers are very sharp and in proper working order, because if you can get the wood chips down to a 1 by 1 inch square, you're not leaving much room for the pest to survive in that. Then you just have to figure out how you're going to deal with that trunk wood. I had the pleasure of having a good conversation with my father-in-law this morning, who's sitting in the crowd right now. And they're from Colorado, where they've been dealing with EAB for quite a while. And he was talking to me about piles being tarped to help create heat that helps deal with this insect as well. So I think there's probably a few options that need to be looked into to understand that. To the second part of your question, anybody who owns ash trees or is very familiar with ash trees, ideally you're already familiar with seeing what some of the normal tip dieback looks like that we see throughout the summer. If you're wandering around and looking through those groves or trees on your property, the key thing there would be to identify or familiarize yourself with identifying the other signs and symptoms of the beetle, like sloughing bark, the serpentine S galleries that have frass inside them. If you get a chance to see small tips or broken branches, looking for D-shaped exit holes within them, and then being able to report that, because the more that we are aware of where it's at, it's going to influence our response and helping come up with better management decisions down the road. I think the state, is it on the sheet on the tables, that there's a state website that has an
Got lots of
interactive
information.
map that shows where it's been at so far? So.
Anybody else want to answer?
One of the techniques also to try to get rid of the pest whenever you have a fallen log or whatever is to remove the bark. It's not easy, but removing the bark also exposes the place where the larvae is. It's not a guarantee that you don't have any residue of pest into the bark into some areas, but it is a technique that was used when I was still in Europe, and we were supposed to, when I was logging, we were supposed to remove the bark of the spruces to prevent habitat for the bark beetles. So that's one way of doing it, but cooking them with tarps is actually a very good idea too. Black plastic, that's definitely possible. And I would say all those little flyers that you see, just take them, distribute them. The more people know about it, the better. And if you have any questions, you can call any arborist in town who's got the credential and the knowledge of the pest.
I think he asked another question about the material. When all the trees, like if we have a lot of dead trees, what's going to happen to them? Like can they be reused somehow or recycled?
Why don't I just talk to Niles right there, who's is also an arborist in town, and he has a portable mill. So ash wood is absolutely gorgeous. Eric touched the subject earlier. It's something that I think it's a fantastic idea, just to being able to recreate some sort of an economy almost on this. If somebody was a builder could use some of the wood. You could actually have a wood that you were very, let's say you are losing one of your favorite trees, and it's a magnificent Oregon ash. Imagine if you could do something like a piece of furniture out of the tree that you love so much. There's like a little consolation in it.
Yeah, beautiful idea. Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Jenny Jonak, and I'm originally from Virginia. So what this really reminds me of is the chestnut tree die-off that occurred between the 1900s and the 1950s, considered one of the greatest ecological disasters in our nation's history that reshaped forests throughout Appalachia. So that's what I think this is incredibly important. I'm so happy you're all speaking on this. My question is, I live on about 80 acres that has a lot of waterway through it and hundreds of ash trees that provide shade that help a lot of the aquatic life survive our increasingly hot summers. As this borer comes in, can you talk about strategies, programs, services to be able to plant replacement trees and strategies for that along our waterways? Because as we lose these mature trees, if we go in and plant small trees afterwards, it's going to take years to replicate the shade and the cooling effects that sustain our fish and other wildlife.
Great question.
I think, is the mic working?
No, why don't you use Jeff's? Yeah. there you go.
Okay. I think that's a really, really important question. And some of the biggest concerns with the loss of Oregon ash is our salmon recovery and fish recovery efforts and the cooling of streams that ash provide. And so ideally we start replanting as soon as we can. As I mentioned, it's really important for the trees that require full sun that we make sure they have full sun so that they can really take off. So that may require some thinning. And I'll mention some of the trees that I recommend. And one of the things to consider, if you ever go to the country fair site, it's so interesting because it has poorly drained and well-drained sites all mixed together. And you can see big leaf, where you see big leaf maple, you can almost know that it's well-drained. And if you don't, then it's likely to be poorly drained. And so we want to make sure that we pay attention to the soils. And so for the poorly drained sites, I consider Oregon white oak and valley pine, Pacific crabapple, western choke cherry is much more common here. I'm realizing as I'm watching it than I knew. Our native willows, red osier, dogwood, black hawthorn, and right next to streams, as long as there aren't human paths or human traffic, black cottonwood is wonderful because it grows really fast and provides incredible habitat, mostly after it dies. But it does provide cooling and shade. On the more well-drained sites, I consider some of our natives like canyon live oak and California black oak, big leaf maple, incense cedar, cascara, quaking aspen, with paying attention to the root sprouting, white alder, blue elderberry, madrone, California bay laurel, paying attention to its aggressive spreading. And then I'd also start considering some regional natives, like coast redwood and giant sequoia and valley oak and blue oak and California buckeye and interior live oak. So, but a big thing is making sure there's light for them, planting as soon as you can, and paying attention to the soils.
Yeah, very, very good point about the soil. Every time you plant a tree, you have to identify the soil that you have. There's a technique called coppicing. That is actually something that one could consider. Whenever you have a tree like an ash, which is one of the best ones to do this, growing back from the stump, you usually have like sometimes 15 stems. You don't have to have 15 stems. You could select one or two individual, and then you if you have the way of maintaining your forest and just work on it, you could actually cultivate the stumps and recreate, one or two large trees out of that stump instead of having 15 or 20 sometime, creating too much shade for whatever you want to plant in between. So you don't have to have just ashes, knowing that you're going to have, let's say you want to plant some white alders and any of the trees that Eric mentioned that tolerate poor drained soils. So that's one way of considering how to cultivate your forest.
Great.
I think just to dovetail on that a little bit, the more increased biodiversity we have in these environments, the better our streams and our riparian areas are going to be, just like anywhere else. This is true for street and boulevard avenues, where the Midwest has lost entire streets of ash trees within 8 years of an infestation. And now they have nothing, and they're trying to play catch up with a growing climate problem. I think the other thing is, from an injection perspective, you can't inject in the water. So if the trees are in the water, we can't do it, right? It's acutely toxic to aquatics as well. If they're out of water, that is fine. But I would, if you're going to consider that in a space like that, I would just be incredibly selective about the trees you want to treat, and then figure out how you're going to manage the rest. And I really like Eric's idea, and I think Albie supports this too, of selective thinning and getting things started before it's a problem in 8 years. It's 8 years of growth is, the best time to plant a tree was 200 years ago. Now we're today, and we're like, oh, it's hot.
I'd like to just add one thing that really struck me as I've been exploring the bottomlands of the Long Tom and the Marys River this spring, is that there is full shade over paths, over streams, from trees that we don't think of becoming very big. Like, I'm seeing forests of vine maple, red osier, dogwood, western chokecherry, and trees that we think of as like 15 to 25 feet tall, making fully 100% shaded canopies. And so, those can become trees very fast and provide shade. So we often just think of the larger trees. So thinking about some of these smaller trees as well.
Great, thank you. Next question.
Hi, thanks everyone for taking the time to put this together today. My name is Niles. I'm also a local arborist. And I had a question about how far can the adult beetle disperse from the tree where it transforms from a larva to an adult to a nearby tree? And would that knowledge somehow allow us to consider sort of a nuclear option where we could kind of create a quarantine zone in the Willamette Valley by cutting down a 20-mile wide swath of all of the ash trees, in the northern half of the valley, or something along those lines?
Good question. Who wants to take that?
Now, you might want to double check on this one, but I think the distribution from adult to, moving around just to contaminate other trees is within a mile and a half. But don't quote me exactly on this one, but I think it's they're good flyers, no doubt about it, but they will have a tendency of just staying, especially if you have a lot of ashes around. Nature is lazy, right? And they just, if they find a tree, they don't have to fly 200 miles they will stick around. So that's what I would assume is going to happen.
I think one of the bigger issues, unfortunately, isn't how far they'll fly in their lifetime, right? An adult beetle maybe lives 1 or 2 years or something. I'm not totally sure. I thought it was 3 miles, but I could be wrong. But we have a lot of vehicle traffic. And quarantines for firewood. I mean, there's some cool stickers on there talking about not transporting firewood. I grew up in the East Coast, and my dad was a firewooder, and when EAB hit there, he was like, well, there goes half my life. We burned it all. We stayed warm. But the other issue is, we have the country fair. People are coming here from Portland and stuff. The beetle gets on your car, it's now here, whether it's in firewood or some other way. I remember hearing stories at past conferences where people who are really familiar with the beetle and trying to manage the ash trees and the beetle population and prevent the spread of the beetle, getting home and realizing they had one stuck on their windshield, right? So they're flying around in Forest Grove. You've got 10 different tree companies showing up, bringing material out, or people going from Forest Grove to Silverton to Eugene to Ashland. You know, that's a really high likelihood of transferring the beetle or locating it somewhere else.
So the adult stage only lasts like 3 to 4 weeks, if I recall. The larvae is up to 2 years. And one thing that is a big challenge is sometimes, which is exactly what happened in Forest Grove, that's how they dispersed so fast, is because the trees that were infected were found on a apartment complex, and the arborist said, you need to remove those trees right away because we might have an outbreak. And they had to go through so much red tape. And by the time they decide, oh, let's go and remove those trees, it was just too late. They came to remove the trees and they were just like felling them on the ground, and hundreds of adults exploded and started to fly away.
Oh, my God.
So that's why it is extremely important for people to be aware of the severity of what they can do. Yeah.
Thank you. We have 1 minute left. Joel, you're next.
I'm Joel Curran. I'm not an arborist. But what I would like to know is what's the cost of injection and the cost of the yearly maintenance program, the other option of treatment?
Is that okay if I share that information?
I think so.
All right.
He's our chair of our committee.
Okay, I can only speak for myself and the company that I own and operate. I charge $15 per inch of diameter to treat a tree. So if you have a 10-inch diameter tree, it's going to cost you about $150 to treat. As far as maintenance and upkeep, it's every 2 years, so that cost is really divided by 2, right, annually. Outside of that, it's just whoever's coming to perform that service, it's going to depend on what their costs are, as well as if you need them to come out and monitor, what their consulting fees might be if they have those. So that'll become going to be a company by company question. I just know what I charge.
Okay, thank you.
I lied. We have time for one more question. Thanks, Ralph.
This might be an easy question, but long answer. The documents that are on the page say that the state of Oregon has a good plan. Could you tell us more about that? What role will the state play in solving this for Eugene?
Well, I can't speak for the state, but I've encouraged Betsy and the City Club to have a panel possibly coming up that would invite ODF and the state of Oregon's local municipalities and utilities to find out what the plans are, because that'd be really important to know. So far, ODF has a plan that you can find on their website that's published, and I think 5 other municipalities have plans out, Salem, Portland, and a couple others that are published and available to look at. And ODF has, in my view, done a really good job at really quickly responding and trying to slow the spread. I don't think anyone thinks that it's going to be stopped, but slow the spread so we have time to respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
One quick comment, not particular to that question, but just more general. I really encourage everybody who's paying attention to ash trees to develop a management plan that's going to fit their needs with their space. And being ahead of it is really going to help. And it's, even though the state has a plan, or the city might have a plan, or other municipalities have plans, it's going to be important for you to have plans for your own private property as well. And talking with professionals about when timing for things, you know, if it's treatment, if it's removal, if it's thinning and restoration projects, getting started on managing that, because what you don't want to have is 10 dead trees in your property that now are a big problem to manage or deal with.
Do I have time to ask one quick question, Ralph? Okay. So, A, how do you know when it's time to remove a tree? And B, if you've got a really small backyard and not a lot of weight, not a lot of accessibility, how would you remove that tree? Quick question.
There are helicopters out there that are available. No, seriously, I would say that scouting and discovering trees that are getting sick and attacked by the pest, that's the primo part of it. When the tree starts to die, let's say you have a third of the crown that is already dead, it's really time to have that tree removed, because it's been proven, like I mentioned earlier, that trees that are killed by emerald ash borer are brittle and more difficult to remove, therefore dangerous, and the cost goes up pretty quickly. There are machines, we call them spider lifts, that are available. We recently purchased one of them that gives you an access to most backyards, so long as you have at least 45 inches in opening of gates, and you can actually bring the machine in the back, get close to the tree, extend the outriggers, and you can actually just be in a bucket, remove the tree much more safely than if you had to climb it. So don't wait too long. I hate to say this, but as soon as you have some suspicion, it's much better just to have any professional arborist in town able to identify the EAB, to come to your place and look, so you can actually act quickly and safely. I'd rather be called 10 times to say no, you don't have a EAB, than too late and then we have a big issue, because it's going to be expensive, inevitably.
I think to follow up with that, some of this equipment can't get everywhere even though we have it. So if we have to use a crane to piece something out, that's going to be a lot more expensive if we can even reach it. So if you have an ash tree in your backyard that looks like it's going to be in a hard to get to spot, you might consider either injecting or removal before it's a problem, which is a bummer, because then we've lost a nice living tree. The other thing is, I would recommend building a relationship with an arborist or tree care provider that you trust in the area, to give you good information to help you make a decision for yourself for what's going to work in that space. That would, and then maybe get it on a monitoring program as well.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, sorry. Yeah, this has been our June 26, 2026 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We'll be taking a break next week for the 4th of July holiday, but we'll be back the following week here at the WOW Hall in downtown Eugene on Friday, July 10th at noon. The program is titled I don't know, is this insert program here? I don't know. It's the Drifters. It's the soccer team. Yep, it's the soccer team. Be talking about how sports is really enriching our culture, and how our culture is enriching local sports. So it'll be a really good program. And I'm sorry I don't have the title. Have a great weekend or week, and we'll see you next time at City Club. Thank you.